The Sea of Japan, 4 a.m., darkness, silence. Then a flash of fire rips across the pre-dawn sky. A North Korean Hwasong-12 ballistic missile, screaming through the atmosphere at 15 times the speed of sound. Its trajectory straight over the sovereign territory of Japan. In Tokyo, 12 million souls. In Osaka, in Kyoto, all of them sleeping completely unaware. Suddenly, air raid sirens shatter the calm across the nation. Every phone blares with an emergency alert. The message: ballistic missile threat, seek immediate shelter. But this was not a test, this was not a drill. North Korea had just made a fatal mistake. And 200 miles away, the USS Ronald Reagan was on the move. A nuclear-powered supercarrier, an instrument of American power, already turning to face the threat. What happened in the next 17 minutes would send shockwaves through the global defense community. Because the United States Navy didn't just track that missile. They didn't just watch it burn across the sky. They delivered a message to North Korea. A message so clear, so overwhelming, that Pyongyang would not conduct another major test for 3 months. This is that story. The story of a calculated response that changed the entire game. And the day Kim Jong-un learned a valuable lesson, that threatening the allies of the United States has devastating consequences. Our story begins 24 hours before launch. For weeks, North Korea had been testing the world's patience. Small launches, medium-range provocations, each one splashing harmlessly into the sea. They were annoying, they were provocative, but they were not an act of war. But then American intelligence noticed a change. This time was different. At 2 a.m., U.S. reconnaissance satellites high above the Korean peninsula spotted unusual activity at the Pyongyang Air Base. Transporter erector launchers on the move. Fuel trucks were arriving, launch crews were assembling. At the CIA, analysts pored over the imagery. The weapon being readied was no short-range rocket. This was a Hwasong-12, an intermediate-range ballistic missile, a weapon capable of striking the American territory of Guam. It was a weapon capable of carrying nuclear warheads. And it was being positioned on its launch pad, its target aimed eastward toward Japan. At 3:30 a.m., the Pentagon issued an urgent warning to Tokyo and Seoul. North Korea was preparing an imminent missile launch. Trajectory unknown. Be prepared for anything. At 4 a.m., Japanese air defense systems screamed to maximum alert. Patriot missile batteries activated. Fighter jets scrambled into the darkness. But they were flying blind. They had no idea where this missile would go, or what apocalyptic message Kim Jong-un was trying to send. At 5:01 a.m., the missile launched. A massive pillar of fire visible from space. The Hwasong-12, it rocketed into the sky at terrifying speed. Within seconds, U.S. Space Force tracking systems locked on, calculating trajectory, predicting the impact zone. Then the data came in, and officers in the Pentagon fell silent. The missile wasn't heading for the ocean. It wasn't aimed at an empty sea. It was flying directly over northern Japan, over populated cities, over millions of civilians. At 5:04 a.m., the missile reached its peak altitude, 550 kilometers, the edge of space. At 5:06 a.m., it began its descent, still over Japanese territory, still traveling at Mach 15. Air raid sirens wailed across Japan. Emergency broadcasts sparked panic among citizens, running for shelter, running for their lives. The Japanese government activated emergency protocols. Trains stopped, traffic halted. 12 million people scrambled for cover. Was this an attack? A fatal mistake. A catastrophic malfunction. Nobody knew. At 5:09 a.m., the missile cleared Japanese airspace. It continued its deadly arc over the Pacific Ocean. At 5:11 a.m., it crashed into the sea over 2,000 miles from its launch point. No casualties, no damage, but a message had been sent. The message was blunt, a declaration. North Korea could now strike Japan at will, and with it, every American base on Japanese soil. Tokyo's call to Washington was immediate. The words were clipped. A North Korean ballistic missile just crossed our sovereign territory, over our people. The demand was clear: this will not stand. At 0500 hours, U.S. Pacific Command sent the flash traffic. The orders went directly to the USS Ronald Reagan Carrier Strike Group. Proceed to launch coordinates. Prepare for a maximum demonstration of force. The mission showed Pyongyang the consequences of threatening an American ally. The USS Ronald Reagan was already underway. With her 70 fighter jets, 5 heavily armed escort warships, and below the waves, 1 nuclear-powered submarine. They had one objective: to deliver a message North Korea would never forget. 0500 hours. On board the USS Ronald Reagan, 150 miles east of North Korea, Admiral Marcus Webb stood in the heart of the warship, the Combat Information Center. From this very room, hundreds of military operations had been born. But this was different. His orders from Pyongyang were brutally simple: demonstrate overwhelming capability, make it personal, and make it unforgettable. Admiral Webb gathered his key personnel: strike group commanders, pilots, weapons officers, intelligence analysts. Gentlemen, he began 30 minutes ago, North Korea launched a missile over Japan. They risked millions of civilian lives for a political stunt. Now it is our turn to make a point. A satellite map illuminated the room, showing North Korea's jagged coastline, its military installations, its missile batteries. We are about to execute the largest show of force operation in 2 decades. I want 60 jets in the sky, and I want them flying within 12 miles of their coast, of North Korean airspace. And Pyongyang needed to understand one thing: that if we chose to, we could erase every missile site from the map in just 90 minutes. At 0600, the operation began. 40 Faye, 18 Super Hornets catapulted from the carrier's deck. They were joined by 20 F-35 Lightning stealth fighters screaming out of Iwakuni Air Base in Japan. South Korea's own F-15s added another 12 jets to the fight. 72 combat aircraft, the largest aerial armada assembled in the region since the Korean War, and they all had one destination: North Korea. The formation reached its holding point, just 12 miles from North Korean airspace, close enough to light up every radar screen in Pyongyang, close enough to strike, but they held back, refusing to cross the line. The message was crystal clear: we are here. We see everything, and you can do nothing to stop us. But the show of force wasn't over. At 0645, 2 B-1B Lancer bombers appeared. They had arrived from Andersen Air Force Base in Guam, each one carrying 75,000 pounds of pure destruction. They thundered along the North Korean coast, low and fast, a demonstration of overwhelming precision. North Korean air defense radars painted the targets, tracking frantically, but they did not fire. They dared not intercept, because they knew the truth. To engage these aircraft meant total war. Then at 0700, the USS Michigan surfaced, an Ohio-class submarine. It breached the waves just 30 miles from the North Korean coast. This single vessel held 154 Tomahawk cruise missiles, every one of them capable of striking targets with pinpoint accuracy. It surfaced for a reason: a deliberate visible warning for their coastal observers to see. The message was simple: even when you can't see us, we are always watching. At that same moment, the U.S. Navy began live-fire exercises. Warships launched missiles. Jets dropped precision-guided bombs, all of it in international waters. A final undeniable warning. It was all perfectly legal, but it was designed to be seen by North Korean eyes. The thunder of explosions rolled across the Sea of Japan. The smoke, a warning visible from Pyongyang itself. This was not a military operation. This was a demonstration, a show of force so absolute that the message could not be mistaken. You launched one missile over our ally. We can launch thousands. You endangered civilians to make a point. We can end your entire regime in a matter of hours. At 8 a.m., the report came in. Admiral Webb received the intel briefing from Central Command. The message was simple: Sir, North Korean Military Command has gone dark. No radio traffic, no radar emissions, total silence. It wasn't a technical failure. It was fear. Pyongyang had received the message. loud and clear. So what did this dangerous standoff truly prove? First, North Korea's provocations have a hard limit. They can fire missiles into the empty ocean. But fly one over Allied territory, and you trigger an overwhelming response. Second, American alliances are not just paper, they are steel. Japan hosts United States military forces. That means an attack on Japan is by definition an attack on America. North Korea learned this lesson the hard way. Third, a demonstration of power can be more effective than war itself. Not violence, not conflict, just the undeniable display of crushing capability. 72 aircraft, 2 strategic bombers, 1 nuclear submarine, conducting live fire exercises within sight of the enemy. That sends a signal, but more powerful than any diplomatic protest. But here is the chilling strategic reality. North Korea seeks these weapons for one reason. Because for them, a conventional war is suicide. Their military is decades out of date. Their economy cannot survive a prolonged conflict. So they rely on bluffs, on threats, on provocation, on making themselves appear far more dangerous than they appear. The missile launch over Japan was meant to be a show of force. Instead, it exposed a fatal weakness. Because strong nations don't fire weapons over civilian homes to prove their power. True strength is demonstrated when challenged. And on that day, America answered the challenge. The response sent a shockwave to adversaries watching from the shadows. China saw the terrifying speed of American deployment. 72 aircraft airborne in mere hours. An Allied force perfectly coordinated with Japan and South Korea. Seamless, lethal, overwhelming. Russia saw America's unwavering commitment to its allies. There was no hesitation, no diplomatic delay, just immediate decisive military action. And Iran saw exactly what happens when you threaten a friend of the United States. Anywhere in the world, overwhelming power appears on your doorstep. This is why American alliances endure. Not because of words written on paper, but because America backs its promises with steel. Japan understood this. They knew that within hours of North Korea's provocation, the full weight of U.S. Pacific forces would be unleashed. That is deterrence, that is credibility. And that is why 3 months later, when North Korea resumed their missile tests, they never again dared to fly one over Japan. The message was received, the lesson was learned. Some lines cannot be crossed. 4 a.m., a missile ignites the North Korean sky. It screams over Japan before crashing into the Pacific Ocean. But within just 3 hours, 72 Allied aircraft blackened the sky in a massive show of force. 2 strategic bombers demonstrated precision strike capability. Then a U.S. submarine broke the surface. A silent hunter with enough firepower to end a regime. 0 shots were fired. There were 0 casualties. But one unmistakable message had been delivered. Today, the USS Ronald Reagan continues to patrol the waters of the Pacific. Admiral Webb was commended for a textbook response to a global crisis. And North Korea still conducts its missile tests. But now their missiles aim for the ocean, far from populated lands, far from Allied soil. Because Kim Jong-un learned a hard lesson. He learned what happens when you threaten America's allies. You get a front-row ticket to American military power. You witness 72 combat aircraft, a force that could erase your entire air force from the sky. You watch bombers at bomb that can level your command structure. You detect a silent hunter beneath the waves, a submarine that can neutralize every missile you own. And you understand, this is a war you cannot win. 4 a.m., the missile that flew too far. The response that changed the rules of the game. North Korea wanted to project strength. America answered with overwhelming superiority. They tried to intimidate Japan. America demonstrated ironclad protection. They thought they could cross a line without consequence. It was a fatal miscalculation. This is the Pacific Theater. This is the alliance that guards freedom. And this is what happens when you threaten friends of the United States. The USS Ronald Reagan, 72 warplanes. One simple message. Do not test us again.